National Assembly. PWDs voiced their concerns over the lack of provisions for their community in the proposed tax reforms, urging lawmakers to consider tax exemptions and waivers, especially on assisted devices to ease their financial burdens. Stakeholders say disability was only briefly mentioned in the proposed legislation, limited to pensions for military personnel with disabilities and issues surrounding estate liabilities. According to them, the bills failed to adequately address the specific challenges faced by PWDs in Nigeria, particularly regarding the affordability and accessibility of essential assistive technologies. Tonight, let's speak with Honorable Bashiru Dawudu, Chairman House Committee on Disabilities and Senior Citizens Matters, who joins us from our Abuja studio. And Dr. Jake Epele, CEO TAF Africa, joins us virtually as we discuss this all-important issue on disability-inclusive tax reforms. Gentlemen, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us on Politics Tonight.
Welcome.
Thank you. Dr. Pele, let me start with you. Going by your years of advocacy for inclusivity, some of your colleagues who are also in the business of advancing the cause of PWDs say the bills fail to adequately address the specific challenges faced by them in the country, particularly regarding the affordability and accessibility of essential technologies. What are the specifics? Dr. Pele, did you get that question? All right, Honorable Bashir, can you hear me? Gentlemen, can you hear me? All right. Dr. Pele, did you get my question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I was saying that first and foremost, the chairman of the committee on tax reforms and Professor Oyedele has been very open in terms of ensuring that the aspirations of persons with disability in this effort to get an inclusive tax reform has been very commendable. He's been very open in terms of engagement, in terms of actions. Tomorrow, he's meeting in a town hall meeting with the community of persons with disability. And not only is he willing to do that, he's decided that the same way he will host the governors and anybody in this process is the same way he is going to host persons with disability. So tomorrow we're at Transcorp Hilton, engaging with him. He's going to address what the issues are and then listen to us what we need. There are a number of individuals that are going to show up to make that event. The Minister for Humanitarian is not sending a representative; he's coming by himself. Mr. Femi Falana, SAN, the Leonard Silk, will grace the occasion. And so we have a number of people that are showing interest in discussing inclusive tax reforms and finding solutions. Some of the issues that we are presenting to the Oyedele's committee are issues like, take for instance, the complexities of filling out forms, going on the website and ensure that they fill out the needful information that is required in terms of the tax. These are some of the things that, peradventure, before now, persons with disability may not be able to access that because the information is not in accessible format. But with our engagement and his willingness to listen and to implement, I think after tomorrow, we will find some of those websites very disability friendly. It's important to underscore here that an officer or a public servant of that nature is willing to engage.
Absolutely, Dr. Pele. Let me come in here. What other issues would he be addressing tomorrow? Because according to some other organizations also advocating for the cost of PWDs, they say that out of the 19 items that currently qualify for VAT exemption under Section 187 of the bill, none of them are related to disability. Can you also confirm that in the Nigeria Tax Bill 2024, disability showed up twice? They also say in Section 164 mentions it in exempting only. It says wound and disability pensions granted to members of the armed forces or of any recognized national defense organizations or to a person injured as a result of enemy action. Please speak to that.
Well, whatever the gaps are, there is no perfect document. And like I said, he is willing to engage and fill those gaps. The engagement method is to point out to him the issues that we want his response or his committee to respond to. Not only his committee, the National Assembly too. We have a chairman of the Disability Committee who is very proactive, and he's on this call with me, and we have a number of other media houses that we are creating awareness as a result of this. So we have people who have the political will. We have people who are willing to listen. We have people who are willing to do. So whatever gap is, and there are many gaps, even many gaps that will be pointed out tomorrow, the whole idea is to ensure that the whole entire process is inclusive. Does he want to do it? Yes. Does his committee want to do it? Yes. And so I think we should look at that, the willingness to get things done.
And I do not think that answers my question, but then how frustrated does that make you feel? I mean, with how you thought the federal government should have understood that persons living with disabilities are survivors and have skills and abilities that make them valuable contributors to society. And interestingly also, I've had these conversations with you severally where I specifically asked if you thought government officials, policymakers and decision makers are aware of the importance of disability as a development issue.
Well, like I said, no matter what you do, and I hope this will answer your question, no matter what you do, whenever there is a gap in a policy, the whole idea is to drive an inclusive or inclusion process. You are able to point out what the gaps are. You are able to provide solution, because oftentimes the problem is that when you are talking about problem and you don't have a solution, it makes it very complex, you know. And so for me in particular, as a policy analyst, I don't like to talk about policy gaps that I will not provide the solution. And so whether it's tax incentive, whether it is ensuring that persons with disability will have accessible format, whatever the issue is, we will trash it out tomorrow and present to the chairman our position, and then go to the National Assembly and present the same position. So the idea here is to engage in order to find solution, not necessarily to criticize.
I do not think this is about criticism, Dr. Pele. I'll move to Honorable Daudu soon. But I mean, if we don't talk about the gaps, I wonder how we expect government to live up to expectation. But Honorable Daudu, let me come to you. You heard Dr. Pele. He's not the only one concerned about how it looks like the federal government does not understand that community inclusion of people with disabilities improves the economic health of the entire system. The Senate commenced the public hearing on the tax reform bills, but a lot of emphasis has been placed on the importance of the bills to the federal government's fiscal reforms and economic revival. Do we consider this as an oversight, or that government does not really care?
Once again, permit me to commend you, because even though this may not be quote unquote an interesting topic, but you have done a lot of programs on disability matters in your program. So thank you for that effort, because the main thing the disability community need is a lot of awareness, even though it's in the disability law. But I want to note and highlight that you are on top of that.
All right.
I haven't said that. This is actually a teachable moment for Nigerians from the perspective of the legislature, so our folks can see how laws are made. The executive brought a bill, the STAR bill, which has been referred to the Committee on Finance, headed by Honorable James Falike. And that Committee on Finance is going to conduct public hearings. So the gaps that you are talking about, that is the forum that they will be addressed. But from the perspective of the Committee on Disability Matters, because we have a lot of engagement with the community, we know that our folks are concerned about various things that we have not seen in the Act that we don't think is inclusive enough. And I give you examples. First, we think that when it comes to the tax on earnings, we think that folks that are persons with disability, if you earn less than 1 million, we think it should be tax exempt. We think if it's above that, it should be about 5%. We think that there should be tax credits if you are investing in accessibility, or you're retooling or retrofitting your organization to be accessible to persons with disability. We think when it comes to the VAT, there should be exemptions for folks that are doing business in accessibility areas, in pharmaceuticals, and things that are relating to accessibility. So we're looking to reduction in rates. We're looking to exemptions in VAT. We're also looking to tax credits, because tax can also be a way that that government can show its priorities. For example, if an organization is employing PWDs, which, by the way, is the law of the land, that you must employ less than 5%. So folks that are doing well by the law and by us should be incentivized by saying that they will have credits for that. And if you are a business that is investing in these areas, you can also have credits for that. The committee is also interested in the what we call the Disability Trust Fund, to see that the savings that are going to be made, or some of these revenues, can actually be put into social protection for persons with disability. I mean, like, you know, there's a Vulnerable Trust Fund, which actually is not funded. So if there's a disability fund, just like the other funds that are in this bill, this is something that can be used for social protection. So thank you very much for that question.
Let me stay with you, Honorable, because, you know, Dr. Pele has refused to talk about the gaps, nor confirmed the ones I read out. I mean, he says he wants to address the legislators, and that's fair enough. But, Honorable, other organizations advocating for this same course have said that out of the 19 items that currently qualify for VAT exemption under Section 187 of the bill, none of them are related to disability. They also talked about Section 188, exempts essential items like medicine and education. Critical resources for PWDs, such as assistive technologies, are not covered. And we all know how important these devices are to the education and daily living of PWDs. And the major concern here is these devices are imported and often come with hefty import duties and taxes. Do you see a sense of urgency to this advocacy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, thanks for pointing out those things, especially as it relates to technological devices, you know, ensuring that some of them that are of necessity, that they are not taxed, so that those who can afford to buy them can actually afford to buy them at the end of the day. You know, so this is why, like I keep saying, the need to engage, interact, agree and disagree. You know, there may be other areas that tomorrow we will be able to point out to the chairman, and whatever are the issues, I guarantee you that we will get results. The idea here is to get solution, not to gloss over the problem.
I hear you, Dr. Epele. That question was actually for Honorable Dawodu.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for that. And that's why I was talking about the teachable moment. Because if you follow the history of this particular tax reform and the kind of rancor that it generated, in hindsight, it's like folks were not waiting to see how the whole process will unfold. And this is how it's supposed to unfold. Bill is presented, it goes through readings, and there's going to be debate, and there's going to be public hearings. And the awareness, which is what you are doing here today. From the perspective of the committee, we are aware of the gaps because we've had some hearings on this issue. And our intention is to present amendments in the areas that are of concern so that the bill actually will be a better bill, be a stronger bill. Yes, is there a bill that is perfect? Absolutely not. That is why there's an opportunity to reform and make amendments as you go by. But I think recognizing that the trend in the world is not about charity for persons with disability. It is now about empowerment, about inclusion. And this is one of the areas where folks can be included. For example, if the law is saying that any public building must be accessible to persons with disability, so an organization that goes extra mile to fix that particular building to make sure that it's more accessible, there should be a place in this kind of tax reform to encourage that kind of person. Those who employ more should have intensified tax situations. People that are doing training for persons with disability, they should be encouraged. So we can actually use this tax bill to redirect into some of the priorities of government, especially with the renewable agenda. The agenda is actually very inclusive of PWDs. This is an opportunity to make that a reality. And I have no doubt here, I share that impression of Dr. Jake, that the chairman is very concerned about inclusion. I know the bill was not perfect, but it's very open. And then we will need his own input also in terms of the final output of this particular bill. Nigeria has to do better by its people. We have to go away from, one person becomes a person with disability hiding folks in the closet. We need to understand that when we're including PWDs in our everyday life, even though it's in the law, we're doing it by ourselves. Because if you get a stroke now, you become a PWD. Give birth to a child that has a disability, you become a parent with PWD. So we have to have it in our understanding that we're not going to leave anyone behind. This is going to be a very good trajectory for Nigeria, and I think Nigeria will be a better place. Thank you very much for the question.
Absolutely, and I wonder how realistic or achievable some of these demands are. Some are asking for a tax break, which according to them will provide much needed financial relief, and this is because PWDs require additional resources to meet their health and educational needs. I want you to react to that, Honorable Dawodu.
Yeah, that's very important. I don't know whether you have had time to spend with the parent of a child with disability, or how well you are close with somebody that has a disability, which is almost in every family. When you are a person that's on a wheelchair, it's not just you. It's you, that wheelchair itself, and the aid. If you're visually impaired, it's like 3 people in one also. If you're a parent of a child with disability, try and imagine how do you take that child to the school if you don't have resources for that? And is the school compliant in terms of getting the kids educated? So it is in the law that folks that have disability will need support, even in tertiary institutions. If you are visually impaired, you need certain technologies, like with the braille technology, if you're deafblind, and folks that are physically challenged will need assistive devices. So this assistive technology is a big deal. But what we find is that they are very expensive. So starting with the ones that have been imported into Nigeria, we think, they should be duty-free to get those things, to get those in Nigeria. And something that Jake is familiar about is about sunscreen for persons with albinism. You cannot imagine how expensive is that. And the main issue with folks with albinism is the fact that they are predisposed to skin cancers. So, because sometimes people don't understand that. Are they really persons with that? Of course they are. Apart from visual problem, they are prone to cancers. So, but if you go and price how much they sell those sunscreens, most people cannot afford.
Absolutely.
So, you find persons with albinism in the sun all the time, and then they develop cancer, and at least one person die every day from skin cancer who are persons with albinism. So, this is important. From the perspective of this tax, in terms of the taxation, the reform, the exemptions, the credits, and the waivers. I mean, talk about VAT. We think that there should be VAT exemptions for certain things. If you're trying to buy a wheelchair, we think that you should be exempted from paying VAT for that wheelchair that they're going to buy. And you're right. It talks about some pharmaceuticals, but it did not address specific pharmaceuticals that are related to persons with disability, like the one I just mentioned. It's going to be a challenge, but it's doable, because if you see the framework of the tax reform, I think Nigeria will be a better place in terms of what they have there. So our job is to make the bill better. And I think we're going to go a long way in terms of getting that done.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Dr. Pele, let me come to you. Two things. I was having this conversation just before we came on air, and considering how expensive some of these devices are, which Honorable had spoken to, government introduces tax incentives for these devices, and another is for us to locally manufacture these assistive devices. Is it really a tall order?
Yeah, not really. I mean, manufacturing those devices locally requires a very multifaceted approach in terms of designing the devices, in terms of ensuring that devices are adaptable, because I'm a proponent for adaptable technology. It's not just that anyone and everyone wants technology, but the technology cannot be used, So it is absolutely possible to try manufacturing those devices locally if there is a proper R&D, there is the presence of the raw materials to manufacture, and of course the funding. How many banks are willing to fund the private sector or the public sector that are willing to manufacture those devices? So it requires a multi-faceted approach, from design to finding the right funding, and inclusive design also is important, because if you go and design something without carrying or taking into cognizance persons with disability, then it will not be used. So there's a concerted effort, there should be concerted effort on the part of the manufacturers to ensure that they manufacture what is, number one, is affordable, two, is usable, and three, is sustainable.
All right. Honorable Daudu, you wanted to react to whether we could manufacture these devices locally. Is it about funding?
It is important to understand that wheelchairs are actually manufactured in Nigeria, except that they are manual. There's an organization called Beautiful Gate that actually do the manual tricycle, and they distribute it nationwide. So, but it's not the electric wheelchair. So it is possible. Now, to answer your question, I think the key is to have investment, investment credits. If you're a businessman, you are thinking about making profit, if you are now told that if you go into this particular area, it's tax exempt, it tends to motivate businessmen. And I think that since this is already available in the background, and there are folks internationally that are doing this, and we import these things, they can actually be done locally. I don't think it's a Herculean task. I think government can also provide funding in terms of the social protection funding programs that government has. Government has programs with the Bank of Industry, the Central Bank, and all that are involved in social protection and social development credits. So this is not something that's far-fetched. The main thing is to be committed to it. The main thing is to have the idea that this is possible. And I think with what we're doing here today, most of our folks will know that this is an area that are untapped, that are unexploited. So if you are thinking into going to business in that area in terms of assistive technology, it's very broad, and it's a lot of things that are, but because there may not be government support. But I think if there are tax exemptions in this situation, the support is going to come, and the interest will be unstoppable. Thank you very much for that observation.
But talking about the laws protecting PWDs, we have the enactment of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act 2019. There is establishment of the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities and the notable appointment of persons with disabilities to leadership roles at the national level, and in a few states should ordinarily signify unprecedented attention to inclusion of PWDs in Nigeria. But looks like we have these laws, but implementation remains a challenge. Honorable Daudu, please react to that.
To start with, I'm impressed. Your depth of knowledge in this field. If you ask the average Nigerian, are they even aware there is a disability law? Most of the time is no. Even elites.
This is my job.
Even politicians. So that is a great thing. Give the community credit. After years of dedicated activism, your house, the House of Representatives, our house, passed that particular act that was signed by President Buhari, actually in 2019. The issue is that because it's not something that was expected to be overnight, there was a 5 years moratorium on that, which actually ended last year in January. So what we're going through now is more of implementation, compliance, and observations. Basically, it should be from the commission which was set up. But the role of the House, because we made the law, we are in an oversight situation to see whether.
But Honorable, don't you think implementation is taking too long? The last time we had a conversation, it was basically about implementation of these laws, and today we're still talking about implementation.
Yes. It's baby steps, and just like all things, the reflection of the executive and the legislature is a reflection of Nigeria. So, but that's not going to make up the give of that fight. I don't think it's going to come a la carte. I think it's going to, rights are not, the law itself is it's not only about protection, it's about rights. I think when you are dealing with situation of rights, then the law has to come strongly onto folks. Let me give you an example. For example, it is the law of the land that every person with disability must be able to enter the public buildings. There is no if or but there. But so from your own perspective, and you're right actually, is that being implemented now? Absolutely no. I think it's very challenging for a PWD to enter a financial setup. They are not able to go through that narrow door that we all find difficult to go, not to even talk about using the ATM. So then you ask yourself, even in the MDAs, how many MDAs who are doing recruitment all the time, are they actually recruiting less than 5%? The answer is that that law is also deficient. It does not come with the sanctions that we would like. And the other part of it is that it did not give the commission that power to prosecute. So in the House also now, there's that law is going through amendment. We would like to amend the act. But what the committee is doing is that the committee is inviting all sectors of the Nigerian government to come and tell us how far they have gone with the implementation. And I think at the end of the day, we should see some results in that regard. Thank you for your observation.
All right, gentlemen, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Please stay with us, everyone.
I am a wealth coach and a real estate developer.
I am Amako Arakwe. I'm a corporate commercial lawyer and an entrepreneur.
Welcome to our Haka. I am Ramatu Shehu Oyibo, an entrepreneur and a business coach.
I am the voice of an average Muslim woman, an hijabite, and a lawyer.
I am a polymath and a serial entrepreneur.
I am Murayo Afolabi Brown, Managing Director, TVC Entertainment. I'm a media consultant, producer, and broadcaster.
The ladies of Your View are made of women from different professions, tribes, cultures, and religion. Join us every Monday to Friday as we share our views on topical and social issues.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked, and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
Voted as the best TV station of the year. TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen. Following all nationwide big and impactful stories. We tell the news from every perspective, covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch.
All citizens matter. And also Dr. Jacob Pele, MD/CEO of TAF Africa. Gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us on the program. Dr. Pele, let me come to you. I'm sure you heard Honorable Daudu before we went on that break. You must have heard him say the law is deficient. This is 2025. We're still talking about implementation of these laws. Is this so because non-professionals in disability policy constitutes both the House Committee and the NCPWD? It looks like you understand empowerment, but are unaware of sustainable policy creation that ensures sustainable inclusion of PWDs. What do you think?
Well, first and foremost, and thank you for the question, it's not the business of the legislators to implement laws when they make the laws. It's not their prerogative to implement. They make the law, but then identify those that will go ahead to implement. And some of those organs are the National Commission for Persons with Disability, organizations of persons with disability like TAF Africa and several others, the private sector, the public sector, the civil society. These are the people that is armed with the opportunity to implement this. Let me start with the civil society. When there is a law of this nature, every civil society working within that space can actually take some of the activities of that law, aspect of it that speaks to thematic programming, and then go ahead to implement. Honorable had talked about the employment of persons with disability. You know, employment of persons with disability, definitely, the law says not less than 5%. So for a private sector individual who wants to fulfill that law, he can go ahead and employ 10% or even more. You know, so take for instance your own media house. You are part of the implementing organ. You can go ahead and employ persons with disability. There are persons with disability who are good newscasters. There are persons with disability who can work in the engineering department of organizations like yours. there are persons with disability who can work at the reception. So it is everybody's, everybody has that mandate. It's everybody's mandate to ensure the implementation of the act. It is very less the job of the legislators. Now, here's where the legislators comes in. When they notice that the laws are not implemented, they would then come and hold entities responsible for not implementing what they should implement. That in itself is their job. But is Honorable Dauda's committee and his committee members, are they doing that? I can tell you for free, they are. They are. They are going above and beyond to ensure that they hold people accountable and ensure that there is proper implementation, you know, whether it is in accessibility, whether it is in incentives, whether it is in providing social investment. They are doing their best, inclusive education. I can go on and on, you know. So it is their job to monitor implementation, but it's not their job to implement.
All right, Honorable, Dr. J.K. Pella just said you're doing more than enough. But let me ask you about NCPWD, because going by the Discrimination Act's provision that established it is under the presidency. So for now, it's unclear whether it now operates under the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. Please help us with some clarification.
Yes, it's under the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs now. That's where it is. Yes, you're absolutely right about that commission. The commission is supposed to be our own ministry. That is correct. Part of the challenge of the implementation you're talking about centers around that agency. For example, there are 35.5 million Nigerians, we think, who are persons with disability, and their budget is just about 2 billion. It's one of the lowest budgets in the Nigerian, but even in this 2025. So what do we expect?
And that was why I asked if government really cared about PWDs.
Yes, I'm talking about the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. I'm talking about their budgets.
Yes.
And I'm saying that they don't even have offices in all the zones, not to talk about all the states. And we expect them to do this major implementation. That's going to be very tough. So the challenge with the executive, first is to increase that budget, which I'm sorry to say that was not done in this particular budget. It is unacceptable, even unbelievable that that kind of agency that's so important to our folks, we have a budget that is just 2-point-something billion. That is really, you can't even believe that. That means that we're still saying that the PWDs are non-existent in Nigeria. So yes, and if you read the law, they are supposed to do the implementation. But if you ask them, they will say they don't have the resources, they don't have the tools. Because if you're going to say you want to do oversight visits and they want to go to all these check buildings, see whether people are doing what they are doing, but they don't have the resources to do that. So, but we are working hard to make sure that change. And that's an area that will need your help in terms of awareness, so that other parts of the government would know that they need more resources in that regard. Thank you.
You know, we're doing our best and we'll continue to do it. But Honorable, you've always said the Disability Act in Nigeria is inadequate. You say it does not clearly and specifically address the children with disabilities, does not address gender issues, protection of children with disabilities, and violence against persons with disabilities. You're pushing for an amendment. How far have you gone with this?
Well, that's also a teachable moment. The way it works with amendments is that we engage the community, which we have, and then we are still even doing more engagement. So we have a bill in the House now, coming out of our committee, that I think is going through the first reading now. Usually you go to the second reading before it becomes a public hearing. Yes, the gaps are a big deal. For example, the sanctions are not sufficient enough. When the person discriminates against PWD, there's a paltry amount of money that you are required to pay. And if you look at, you mentioned women, it doesn't, practically didn't, as talked about women with disabilities. Women with disabilities are actually the majority. They are 55% of persons with disability in Nigeria. So looking at the Violence Against Persons Act, we think that a perpetrator that targets a woman that is on wheelchair should have a heavier punishment because that person has been specifically targeted because they think they are vulnerable. The law does not even address children with disability. That's really a big thing. You know about intellectual disabilities, kids that have issues with learning. We don't have those areas being covered. So with that, in our amendment, we want to cover the children. We also want to cover the women. Also, we are also interested in the Electoral Act. In this particular electoral, there's also, there's also Electoral Act, Electoral Amendment that is going on. So we have some issues with that, and we would like to also get into the constitutional amendment of the Nigerian Constitution. Because we think if you have a smart lawyer, you can say some of these things that are in this act are non-constitutional.
Absolutely.
So at the end of, at the end of the day, we'd like to make sure that. So those are three things going on in the House right now. Amendment of the Disability Act, amendment of the Electoral Act, and the amendment of the Nigerian Constitution. And all these three areas were actively involved. So that's my answer to that.
Also, Honorable, taking a cue from our last conversation, you said only 13 states have domesticated some of the laws protecting the rights of persons living with disabilities, especially in the area of employment. And since our last conversation, how much advocacy has gone into making sure other states domesticate these laws?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad that we had that discussion at that time because it was effective. Sometimes we don't know how important these kind of programs are. I can announce to you now that there are 22 states that have now domesticated. So probably give yourself a pat on the back that you have been contributory to our cause.
Absolutely.
So what does that mean? What it means is that it's not only the federal government's job. If they look at the states that have agencies for persons with disability, we see the difference. Because there'll be a budget, there will be an executive secretary, and if the governor wants to take care of those folks, there's a place to go.
All right.
And face it, when you look at it politically from our perspectives, PWDs are very loyal and dedicated voters.
All right.
And they're very active in the period of voting. So I want to take this opportunity to talk once again to our governors that we're appealing to you, we're begging you to help us and make sure that in all the states, the law